In this tutorial, I'm going to talk to you guys about nested loops in Python. Using a nested loop basically means adding one loop inside of another loop. And with this technique, we can do some amazing things. For example, we can easily generate a list of coordinates. So a coordinate, as you know, is a combination of an x and y value. Let's say 0 and 0. Now, let's say we want to generate a list of coordinates like this. So we have 0 and 0, then we have 0 and 1, then 0 and 2. Next, we're going to change x, so we're going to use 1 for the x. And once again, we're going to use these three values for the y coordinate. So 1 and 0, then 1 and 1, and 1 and 2. You got the point. We can easily generate these coordinates using nested loops. Let me show you. So we start with one loop, let's say for x in range 4. With this loop, we can generate values for the x coordinate. Let's print this on the terminal. Okay, so we get the values 0 to 3. Now, for each x, like 0, we should generate a few y values. So that is where we use a nested loop. So inside of this loop, we're going to add another loop. So instead of just printing x, first we want to add another loop for y in range, let's say 3. Now we can print x and y together. So print, here we use a formatted string to display coordinates like this. So we add parentheses. Inside of this parenthesis, first we need to add x, so curly braces, x, then a comma, followed by another set of curly braces, and y. Let's run this program and see what we get. There you go. So we have these coordinates 0 and 0, 0 and 1, 0 and 2. Then we have 1 and 0, 1 and 1, 1 and 2, and so on. So let me explain exactly how this program gets executed. So in the first iteration of our outer loop, x is 0, right? Now we are on line 2. Here we have a new loop, which we call an inner loop. In this inner loop, in the first iteration, y is going to be 0. So we'll print 0 and 0 on the terminal. Now the control goes back to line 2 or our inner loop. In this second iteration, y will be set to 1, but we're still in the first iteration of our outer loop. So x is still 0, but now y is incremented to 1. So that is why we see 0 and 1 on the terminal. Once again, the control goes back to line 2. We are in the third iteration of our inner loop. So this will continue until this inner loop completes. That is when y reaches 2, because this range function generates number 0 to 3, but not including 3. So we'll have 0, 1, and 2. After this inner loop completes, then the control goes back to line 1. At this point, we're going to be in the second iteration of our outer loop. So x will be 1, then the control will be moved to line 2 or our inner loop. At this point, this range function is going to generate the numbers 0 to 3 one more time. So this inner loop will be executed 3 times, and then we'll go back to our outer loop. So this is how nested loops get executed. Okay, here's an exercise for you, but this one is a little bit more challenging than the exercises we have done so far. So I really don't expect you to do it, but if you do it, wow, I will be so proud of you. So see what I have done here? Using nested loops, I've written some code to draw this F shape. Can you see that? So let me give you a hint. First of all, we have this list called numbers. In this list, we have these values, 5, 2, 5, 2, 2. These values determine the number of x's we have on each line. So, for example, the first item in this list, this tells us that we should have 5 x's on the first line. There you go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the second line, we're going to have 2 x's. On the third line, we're going to have 5 x's, like this. So I've written code to convert a simple list of numbers into a shape like this. Now here's a tip for you. Using a for loop, you need to iterate over this list. In each iteration, you get one number. This determines the number of x's to be displayed on that particular line. So if you want to cheat, you can get this number and multiply it by a string that contains x. So if you multiply x by 5, you'll get 5x's. That's not what I want you to do. I want you to use an inner loop here to generate a string that contains 5x's. So imagine in Python, we cannot multiply a string by a number. So to solve this problem, we need a nested loop. So go ahead and spend 5 minutes on this exercise. And by the way, do your best to solve this. It is a little bit challenging, but it's not extremely difficult. It just requires a little bit of focus. You'll see my solution next. All right, so first we need to iterate over all the items in this list. So for item in numbers, or we could rename this variable to x_count. That is the number of x's on each line, okay? Now, I told you that if you want to cheat, you can write code like this. Print x times x_count. If we run this program, we get the same output. So this is the beauty of Python. With Python, we can write expressions like this. We can multiply a string by a number to repeat it. A lot of other programming languages don't support this feature. But for this exercise, I wanted you to imagine that we don't have this feature in Python, so you would have to use an inner loop to solve this problem. Here's how it works. In the first iteration, x_count is going to be 5. So we need to generate 5 x's. How can we do that? Well, let's say we define a variable called output, and initially we set it to an empty string. Now we need to add 5 x's to this string. So we can use another loop for count in range of x_count. So we're using the range function to generate a sequence of numbers from 0 up to x_count. So in our first iteration, x_count is going to be 5. So range of 5 would generate the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this inner loop will be executed 5 times. That is exactly what x_count represents. So now, in each iteration, we simply need to append an x to our output variable. So we said output plus equals x. And then, after this inner loop, we simply print the output. With this, we'll print 5 x's on the first row. Then we go to the second iteration of our outer loop. At this point, x_count is going to be 2. Now, on line 3, we're going to reset our output variable to an empty string. So we start over. Then we go to our inner loop. This loop will be executed 2 times, so we'll append 2 x's to the output variable and then print it. As simple as that. So see, it wasn't really that difficult, but it was slightly more difficult than the previous exercises. So let's run this program. There you go. Now, if you're adventurous, I want you to modify the values that we have in our numbers list to print an L here.